Israeli tanks have reached the gates of two hospitals in Khan Younis, southern Gaza today, according to residents in the city, cutting them off from emergency medical care. Footage showed gunfire and columns of smoke in the heart of Khan Younis overnight, with bombardments reported to be among the most intense since the war began in October. The city's only major hospital still accessible is the Al-Nasser hospital, and witnesses there say its trauma ward is overwhelmed with wounded people, and even burying the dead is a dangerous task.
Currently, dead bodies are being buried inside the Nasser complex. It's very difficult to leave the complex and go to any cemetery and bury them because we're under siege, and anyone who leaves the complex is targeted. Last night, we lived through a horrifying night. The shelling wouldn't stop even 1 minute. Buildings would shake with us inside. Shrapnels would fall on us.
Well, let's get some more on all of this. Iris Makler is our Jerusalem correspondent. She's with me on the line now. Iris, we've said this before, but it is worth reiterating. The situation for civilians in Gaza just getting worse and worse, as we heard there from that one individual at the Al-Nasser hospital.
The area around Khan Younis is definitely, the situation there is deteriorating. You can see that from the pictures that you see of civilians now fleeing south to Rafah, already overcrowded. But they're leaving Khan Younis because the fighting there is getting more intense and the air bombardments are getting more intense. I've just seen an interview with the trauma surgeon at Al-Nasser hospital, and he says that most of the people who come in who are brought in are actually civilians who have been in a shelter of some kind or sheltering in Khan Younis and were hit during an airstrike. And he says he can't treat them properly. So if you're one of the lucky ones who can get on a vehicle, you can leave Khan Younis. Otherwise, you come to this hospital, which he says simply doesn't have enough doctors or medicines. It's interesting, there was a discussion of more medical aid coming in to the Gaza Strip. And he said, yes, some has come in, but it isn't what he needs for the treatment of people in this kind of trauma. And by the way, there was also the suggestion that some of that aid was going to go to the hostages. You remember that whole story we've been reporting last week? I've just seen an interview with one of the hostages' families and an Israeli official, and there's no information of any kind to confirm that any of that has actually got to the hostages either. So civilians, once again, Nadia, as all the time that I've been reporting this story, it's civilians who are on the front line and civilians who are paying the price in this war.
Indeed. And let's talk a bit more then about the hostages and the hostage families. You touched on this already, but pressure, we know, is mounting in Israel to try and get those hostages out. And there's been particular focus on that today. Just what's been happening?
That's right. There was, I guess you could call it a break-in to the parliament, to the People's House, and they went to one of the committees, the Economic Committee, the Finance Committee, and it was relatives of the hostages breaking in and saying to their representatives, you've got to deal with this. This may not be comfortable for you. It's day 108 for them, for our families, under the ground somewhere in the Gaza Strip in terrible conditions. It's not comfortable for them either. Deal with it. And that, I think, is a sign that what is starting to be discussed here, not necessarily by the politicians, not by the Prime Minister, not by the Defence Minister, but other politicians are hinting at it, that actually it now has to be a choice of war aims, that the two are no longer compatible. Either you destroy Hamas or you free the hostages. And I think that is starting to sink into the families of these hostages, and naturally their priority is the return of these people alive. As they say, it's no point bringing them back to us in a coffin. We want them alive. The ones who are alive now, the 100 or so who are believed to be alive now, it's the Israeli government's priority to return them. And that is, I think, now the problem for Israel, or it's where it goes ahead militarily. Is its aim the release of the hostages, or is its aim the military destruction of Hamas?